Here is some more about citing, measuring, and probably not transferring, but possibly. We'll see. So we've talked about several things. We've talked about using this tool in our hand. It's already that helps us know what is straight and helps us know what is horizontal and vertical. Excuse me, something there. So we're going to use that to our advantage, and what we want to do is any object that we're going to try to draw, we're going to identify, like we're gathering information before, but at this point we're going to gather information about what's called the notional space, or the bounding box, or the boundary box, boundary space, and any one of those. The point is that I'm going to use my pencil. Say I'm going to draw this. I want to draw this stone right here. I'm going to use my pencil. I'm going to hold it level, and I'm going to just sort of scan this, and I'm going to use that to help me determine at which point on this actual image is the top, I would call this, of this image. And top is a bit of a relative term because it just happens to mean the highest point up on this flattened image of this item, not to be confused with, if we considered this side the top of or something. Anyways, the top point. I'm looking for these points. I'm looking for these boundary points. So I'm using my pencil to help me scan that way, and I use it, and I see that the lowest point of this image of a stone is down here. So I'm going to mark these points. I'm going to mark the top and the bottom, and I'm going to do the same thing with holding it vertical and determining the farthest right and the farthest left. The farthest right, I can tell, is a point somewhere around there, and the farthest left is somewhere around there. So I'm creating this, what I enjoy sharing, a little mnemonic device, whatever you want to call it. TRBL, top, right, bottom, left, which conveniently enough sort of sounds like trouble, or tribble if you're a Star Trek fan. But and then I tell students, do this or you'll get in trouble. Haven't quite figured out how to work the tribble thing in yet, but I'll get on that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a rectangle based on parallel vertical and horizontal lines going through those points. So basically, without getting too mathy, a line that is tangent. So now I am creating a notional space, boundary box, bounding space, all sorts of fun things. So now I have gathered that much information about this stone. And if you'll remember from the last time, what I also like to do is divide up this rectangle into quadrants. So I'm going to find the midpoint of this side. And once again, I'm not transferring, I'm just gathering information. If you can tell, I identified these spots and I made these lines, and now I'm going to once again use this same handy dandy tool that I've been using to figure out what the midpoint of this bounding box is. Let's see how close I am. Close but not quite. I'm going to call that good for now. And if that doesn't make sense to you, check out some of the other videos. Basically, I'm just trying to make sure that those distances are the same. And that way I know that this dot is indeed in half. So I'm going to drop a vertical line. That will help me there. Let's see, I'm going to do the same with the finding the middle of the vertical sides here. And this is where I usually verticals seem to be a little more challenging for me than horizontals. Perhaps they are for you as well, perhaps not. But kidding aside, just practicing finding the midpoint of any line segment is something great to practice. I'm going to call that fine for now. As I'm making this horizontal line for marking for to create quadrants, I'm looking at the line I'm making sort of in my peripheral vision, but I'm also just paying attention to, does it seem like I'm creating an equal box here or equal rectangle? I'm looking at this entire space as I'm drawing this, and then I'm relating that entire space to this entire space and seeing if they are equal. Same idea with this vertical. So now I've identified all sorts of great information about this stone. And if I want to transfer that, if I want to draw that, here's how I'm going to go about doing it. You weren't supposed to be there, but you are, so that's okay. This rectangle is the one I was my example in the second part 2, I should say. So if I'm going to transfer this rectangle, let's see, I'm going to take a measurement of that distance, the top distance. Are you still in? Nope. Let's say I'm going to do it over here. So know that that is the distance along the top. Let's see. This is looking pretty darn square, huh? That's interesting. I'm going to see. Not quite, no. Rearranging here. It brings up a good point. I mean, a lot of times, depending on where you are and what you're holding, you can sort of run into things on your paper or what is holding up your paper. And sometimes you'll need to work around it, and really it's not that big of a deal. So I'm going to keep going with this, creating this boundary box that this stone will fit inside of. I'm going to test it. Let's see. Looks like it's about that high. That's pretty close. It's a little wider than it is. So you can sort of spend time doing this, and it's a lot easier when you're not trying to talk and do it at the same time. So now that I have that rectangular space, one thing I do like to tell folks is to do the old eyeball test. And it might not be so obvious just right now, but I'm going to try to look at this and really kind of ask myself, does that outer rectangle really seem the same proportion as that? And to me, it kind of doesn't. And I'm not sure if it's because my eye is getting fooled by some things here, or I'm not sure if I've just not quite measured accurately and drawn carefully enough. But I can test that if I want, and go back and make sure that it is accurate. And at this point, I'm going to also measure off these bisecting lines. I'm going quickly. Yeah. Slow down, James. So now we have all sorts of information to help us transfer the drawing of this stone to our piece of paper. And you know, we would have done all this really light just to help us have just for guidelines and construction lines and marks and whatnot. So I am gonna sort of guesstimate where this top point is. And I'm sort of, you know, judging how far over it is between in that top upper left, this line from here to here. I'm measuring, estimating that distance from here to here, and then there to there, and saying I could do there. If you wanted to get really exact, you could certainly get out your pencil and measure that way. All this stuff turns into sort of a trade-off between, as I like to tell people, getting accurate so you are confident and pleased with what your results are. But the potential downside is that, you know, it's easy to take all the damn fun out of this with all this measuring and construction lines and thinking, and a lot of times I get to the point where, you know, it's just, I want to draw. Where's the drawing part come in? So you'll sort of find where your balance point is, and it will probably change. If anything, you'll sort of start off with a little bit of one and get good at that, and you know, get good at creating this grid, this information, and transferring it, and then you'll be better at eyeballing things, and then you'll start wanting to draw things that are tougher to eyeball, and then you'll sort of go back to this system and practice again how to really nail down some this sort of information. One thing I'm doing now is just I'm sort of creating some contour lines. And a very helpful thing to do at this point is to use negative space. And so I've created this boundary box around this stone. And yes, I'm thinking of drawing that curve from there to there. I'm trying to make it arch and arc the same. And what can help me quite a bit is thinking of this negative shape, going back and forth between the curve of the stone, which would be the positive, and the background shape, which would be the negative. So let me focus a little bit more on trying to clean up this contour. It kind of comes along here. That's cool. I didn't quite hit my mark down here, did I? Not sure what was going on. I was probably blabbing about something brilliant, I'm sure. So this contour is going to come way down, further than I had it the first time. And touch the edge there, kiss the edge, maybe that'd be fun. To say it sort of straightens out, that's kind of cool. And then it starts curving, but not till a little bit later than I had it doing before. So anyway, this is how you can create a drawing that is it will get you in the ballpark. I like to say that none of this is like exact science. If I wanted it to be exact, I'd get out a piece of tracing paper, and take all the personality out of something that I was going to draw. But this technique will definitely get you in the right idea, in the right sort of proportions. And next, I'm going to talk about no, I'm not. I'm going to keep looking at this, and I'm giving it the old eyeball test. And I think one of the things it seems to me that indeed the proportions of my original box kind of seem off to me. And since I've done all this really lightly, I'm sort of doing it dark here and fussing for illustration purposes, but since all of my marks are really quite light and whatnot, it's going to be really easy for me to erase and adjust accordingly. And indeed, if I wanted to remeasure that box and make sure that it was more accurate, I could do it at this point, and I wouldn't be all bummed out about having to erase some parts of my fabulous drawing. And if you get too far into a drawing and too emotionally connected, whatever you want to call it, with a part of your drawing, it's really hard to erase and correct. Anyways, that's the idea. Practice, it'll start coming really quickly, and